Why do you look so tired?
What? Oh, I just got out of work late yesterday, and then I had a bunch of stuff to do. I didn't get any sleep at all. I think I feel a cold coming on.
Mike,
Yeah?
friends tell the truth.
I couldn't stop after episode 1 of Stranger Things. I binged the whole season, okay?
Binged?
Yeah, you know, when you watch the whole season straight through, like I did twice,
Twice?
or 3 times. I don't know why I just didn't tell you. All my Facebook friends know. I just didn't want you to think I was just such a wastoid, you know?
Mike,
Yeah?
I understand. Yeah. By the way, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that J.J. Abrams is not going to hear this.
He listens to this podcast.
Well, after how rude we were to him in your last podcast, I think he may be a little turned off to us.
The truth hurts. You know, if you want to get better, you have to listen to criticism.
So, when you watched the show the very first time, did you think Will was actually dead there?
I did, and I wasn't sure. Because, yeah, at this point we know nothing about. We don't know yet that the body that they're going to find in the morgue is a fake. We don't know what the Demogorgon does. Spoiler. We don't know what the Demogorgon does, so and we don't know yet. I don't know exactly how to word this, but we don't know yet like just how far sci-fi the show is going to go, right? So in some shows at this point the government agents might whip out laser guns. Now it turns out that this show is pretty grounded in reality, like the government agents don't have anything that government agents didn't actually have in the 80s. But we don't know that at this point. So I didn't know whether like they had the capacity to clone a Will body and just leave the dead clone body in the water to be found, or whether Will's body had been destroyed when his spirit was transferred into the Upside Down.
Okay, baby, talk to me. Talk to me, where are you? Good.
Yeah.
I also didn't know when she's talking on the light bulbs, when she's talking to Will.
That's the end of episode 3, and it's terrifying.
Okay, yeah, when he tells her run, I also did not know for sure whether that was Will talking to her, because there's a fair amount of people who are confused and misdirected, like when Hopper is talking to the guy who had lunch at Benny's, was the last guy to see Benny alive.
Yeah.
And Hopper is asking him, then he shows him the picture of Will, and he's like, did you see this kid there? And the guy saw L, but he doesn't know. It could as well have been Will, as far as he knows. So Hopper is basically looking for the wrong kid at that moment. So I didn't know whether Joyce had the wrong person. You know, it could have been some other entity in the Upside Down that was communicating with her. I had no idea at that moment whether it was truly Will or not.
Yeah, I wasn't sure either. Like, I thought it was, but then the monster popped out, and I was like, confused.
That's where we first see him fully come through the wall, more than just a hand or a silhouette. And I forgot to say that the part of the reason when she's talking on the light bulbs, I wasn't sure if it was Will, is it reminded me of the movie Sphere. I don't know if you've seen Sphere.
It sounds familiar, but
it's
seen it.
Michael Crichton book that was turned into a movie.
Okay.
And it had Samuel L. Jackson. But in that, they find the sphere, and they think it's an alien spaceship, and they're using this computer to talk to it. And sometimes it responds, and sometimes not. And sometimes its responses are hard to interpret. So that's what I was feeling when she had this sphere of light bulbs. And she's like, blink once for yes, and twice for no. And then she asks him a question that he can't just answer yes or no. So he gives no answer.
'Cause she panics.
Mm-hmm. And so that reminded me of the scenes where they're trying to ask this entity in Sphere questions, and at one point it just stops answering, and they're typing and they're calling into the air, "What, are you still there? Why aren't you answering? What's going on? Answer my question." And they're scared of it because it may have all the powers of this advanced alien spaceship. Well, it turns out they're not talking to an alien. It's Samuel L. Jackson's subconscious mind. So he's like asleep in the ship, and his dreaming mind is speaking to them on the computer. So I had no idea if it really was Will or not.
Yeah. Have you seen Arrival. Well, they talk to aliens, and the aliens are writing on the wall in their language, and they're trying to learn their language, and they think they've learned it, and they're talking to them. And the whole movie, I'm like, but wait, what if you completely are misunderstanding the words that they're saying, and you think you're communicating with them, but really you're saying something completely different? And then also, Neil deGrasse Tyson pointed out that they're writing on a glass wall, and so how do they know that they're not writing backwards? And that they've misunderstood everything. But yes, I also was in the same boat as you, thinking, how do we know she's talking to Will? And so far, this is definitely the scariest episode. Episode 3. You get the scary monster. You get the height of true detectiveness in it, that the boy has now died and been found out in the water, dead. The creepy, let me put all the lights up. You get the moment where the little girl, where Holly walks into the room and all the lights go off, and then...
Oh, yeah.
And the monster...
The little girl almost got eaten by the Demogorgon.
Oh, I really thought she was going to the first time I watched the show, which would have been terrifying. Also, you get Barb getting eaten. Episode 3 is definitely a scary episode compared to the rest of the season.
But this is the first episode where we see it open its mouth. You have to freeze frame it.
Oh, did it? Oh,
yes.
I didn't remember that it opened its mouth. I was watching, and I thought it just looked at us with its
right.
weird,
No, you miss
face.
it. It's when Barb gets taken, actually, because it goes so fast. I didn't see it at all the first time. You have to freeze frame it, and there's just a brief couple of frames where it's looking at Barb, and all you see is its mouth opened up and all its teeth. Because when it comes out of the wall and Joyce sees it, its face is closed, and it just has its blank, featureless gray face. But there's just a split second when it takes Barb that you can see its mouth open with all the teeth, and that's the first we get to see of that.
Those teeth are not good.
It's just a maw.
Yeah.
So I do think it's pretty clear that it doesn't get these people to eat them, it's to lay its eggs.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Although, doesn't it eat the deer just to eat it?
Probably. So maybe it selects certain sort of hosts for its eggs. I don't know enough yet about its biology, because, in Alien, depending on what host you come out of, you look different, right?
Yes.
Because it had the dog or the ox alien.
They did?
Was that Aliens 3?
Get away from her, you...
There's a scene where, and they changed it, I think one was the theatrical release and one was the home video release, I think. But one of them it pops out of a dog, and one of them it pops out of a cow that's hanging in a butcher's shop or something.
Oh.
And it comes out as four-legged instead of like the normal alien. So there's a lot of fan speculation that since the Demogorgon is a bipedal creature, that it may have come from a human. So maybe it eats deer but leaves its eggs in humans so that its babies will come out as human. Or maybe it's partially human itself. I don't know. Who knows?
I'm not sure. It'll be interesting to learn. I'm sure we'll find out in season 2 what it is. But yes, that is a terrifying moment. And that actually brings up a question I wanted to ask. Would you consider this a horror genre show?
Well, that's
it's obviously
always,
many genres. But...
Somebody actually brought that up the other day. I'm not sure. That's always a tricky... But certainly the supernatural mystery is a huge part of it, and that could be classified as horror genre. But I think the horror genre is just so broad, because it can be anything from slashers to torture porn, which I don't watch, like Hostel, to so like, for example, Signs I thought was great, even though a lot of people don't like Mel Brooks. Well, everybody likes Mel Brooks.
You shut up!
A lot of people don't like Mel Gibson. I thought Signs was great, and Signs is one type of horror movie, if you want to call it that, and Jaws is a different type. Even though those two have
Jaws
some similarities,
is an
they've got
action-adventure
differences.
Movie. It's not a horror movie. It is, but it always upsets me when people call it a horror movie.
Right.
It's so like laughably not scary.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying, is there's lots of things that one person would say, no, that's not a horror movie.
How do I find you? What should I do?
So spooky, but not horror, and that's kind of how I looked at Stranger Things.
Very much Lovecraft, very much Stephen King. X-Files.
Yes. I only ever seen like an episode of the X-Files, so I can't speak.
Think of the intro music
but...
for X-Files.
Oh, good point.
Chapter 3 is the first moment where Hopper realizes that someone's covering something up.
Oh man, I was so proud of Hopper. That was him being a big city cop when he's like, "You remember why we had to stop the search on that night? Oh, it was raining. Did you see rain in that video? That was great."
Yeah, Hopper knows what he's doing. And now it's the first time he realizes that Will has been taken, not just that he fell in a ditch or that he's off with his dad, or this is the first time he realizes that there's something not right, and that's why Will is gone.
Yeah. It's a good thing you realized that, otherwise he would have given up when Will's body showed up.
Yep.
Yeah, I like that a lot, when he was like, "Oh yeah, I noticed that's not the right video."
Yeah, well, that's funny.
And going back to an earlier Hopper moment with finding the scrap of fabric.
Yeah, that's right.
I found it funny that anyone thought that that might have been a piece of Will's clothing, because it very obviously does not look like Will's clothing, but it's okay. They're all volunteers. They can't be expected to be that smart.
Yeah, they're not big city cops.
They're
small town bumpkins.
Yeah.
It's a good thing they had Hopper. Can you imagine if Callahan was in charge of the investigation?
Oh my goodness. Oh man. That would not be good. That'd be a different show.
And a lot of people make a big deal about how often Hopper punches people, because later that does happen. Later it's kind of like a meme, like, "Hi, my name's Hopper," and then he punches you in the face.
Okay, let's try this one more time.
That only happens later. See, in this part, we see him, he talks his way into the facility. He's like, "What's your name, Patrick?" All right, takes his hat off, shuts off the car.
Oh, that was good.
"Can you help me out, Patrick? I got the mayor breathing down my neck. Just help me out, Patrick. Can you swing something, please?" So he'll use diplomacy when he can.
I thought that was good. I was very happy to see that Hopper was a reasonable guy, because they do a good job of. I like his character overall. That they start him off when you first see him, you think this is some dumb, drunk chain smoker who doesn't know what he's doing, who hates his job, and then you find out that he actually really likes his job, and is really good at it, as the show goes on. And they kind of teach you to not be so quick to judge.
Yeah, actually, David Harbour, who really gets into the roles, is very big about that. He's like, I hope one thing people take from this is not to judge people so quick, because maybe people act like that because they have something in their past.
Well, don't I feel
He's
smart.
a very in-depth guy.
He seems really cool. I feel like he would be...
Practitioner of American Method.
Yes, it makes me happy. I love, by the way, when he went to the library, and after she makes fun of him for not calling him back, she's like, "So you want to go out this weekend?"
Hey, Marissa. How you doing?
You have a lot of nerve showing up here.
What?
You could have at least called, said, "Marissa, hey, it's not going to work out. Sorry I wasted your time. I'm a dick."
Yep. I'm sorry. Maybe we could go out again next week.
Like, he just doesn't know when to quit, which is great. Also, his line to the other lady that he had taken back to his house when he lists off when the last murder and suicide were in Hawkins.
You ever feel cursed?
Again reminded me of our hometown, because when that murder happened here about 12 years ago, the last murder was in 1970.
Yeah. So in here, right after the scene overlooking the quarry pool, they call Hopper away, and what does he rush away to? He finds Benny dead, because there's no justice for Benny. And it's, of course, been made to look like a suicide. But what I paid attention to is that they say, "So you feel like a big city cop again, don't you?" So
Yes.
Hopper used to be a big city cop.
I believe Indianapolis.
Did they ever say Indianapolis? That's the only city in Indiana.
Remember. No, there's Fort Wayne's big, South Bend's
Right.
big. That's about it. Bloomington's big.
He could have gone to Chicago, but I'm going to assume Indianapolis.
Yeah.
So what I assume, just making up Hopper's backstory or trying to predict Hopper's backstory, here's what I assume, and this might not be right, is that He was a young guy in Hawkins. I think he went to high school in Hawkins. I don't think they say that. This is what I'm inferring. I think he was a young guy in Hawkins, maybe like in a grade or two above Joyce and Lonnie. And he went to the police academy, and he got a big job as a big city cop. And then when his daughter died of cancer, he either quit because he got depressed, or the pills he was popping for his depression and all his drinking, that they asked him to quit the big city force. They were like, "Look, you're not fit to do this job anymore. Please go." And so then he moved back home to Hawkins, and then somehow he became sheriff. So I'm gonna my complete fake speculation is I'm gonna guess the old sheriff or the old police chief of Hawkins, maybe he knew Hopper when he was young. Like maybe he was Hopper's mentor, like the kid's science teacher here. Maybe he was the guy that saw something in Hopper and said, you should get out of this little town. You should go to the police academy and make it big for yourself. So when Hopper moved back all depressed and bought some tiny little cabin and just drank all day, that police chief was retiring and went to Hopper's house and like slapped him out of his drunken stupor and said, "Listen, you need to try to get your life back. I'm going to be retiring here and I want you to be the next police chief." So that's my fan theory of how he got to where he is.
It's not a bad one. He's definitely had some rough times. I love that line, though, after Callahan dopishly said, "Must feel like a big city cop again." And he said, "Yeah, but back then they were usually strangers."
Benny was my friend.
Benny was my friend.
So, I think Lonnie,
Yeah.
they drive to Lonnie's house and he talks about Joyce. And so, again, I'm trying to speculate on the backstory, just like I came up with my own backstory for Hopper, which is probably not true. But if it is, I have a backstory for Lonnie, too, that, so when they go to Indianapolis, Lonnie says,
The boy never was very good at taking care of himself.
This isn't some joke, right? There are search parties, reporters.
Hopper's not still chief, is he? Tell your mother she's got to get you out of that hellhole.
So Lonnie knows Hopper, and when Hopper's questioning the old guy who was the last guy to see Benny alive before Benny got shot, when he shows the picture of Will to that old guy, the old guy doesn't say, "Oh, that's Joyce's son," right? He says, "That's Lonnie's kid."
Yeah.
So the town knows Lonnie, and Lonnie knows the town. So my theory is those three all went to high school together, Lonnie and Joyce and Hopper. Maybe they were a year apart or two, but I think they all went to high school together. And I think Joyce was dating Hopper at one time, and then she left him for Lonnie. She broke up with him and she got with Lonnie, which was a terrible choice because
She's like Nancy.
Hopper ended up with, a good career and a happy family up until the death that ruined it all. And instead, she chose Lonnie, who walked out on her to leave her as a single mom with 2 kids and couldn't hold a job or whatever was wrong with him. So I think early on, Hopper resented them. He didn't like Lonnie, and he thought that Joyce left him for somebody worse. But I think then he got over it, probably when he got married and had his happy family for the first 5 years, until that was all ruined. So I think now he's over it. So that's because I think you can see some of that in the very first episode where Joyce comes into Hopper's office. I feel like they have history together. And then Callahan asks about it. Callahan asks the other deputy. And the other deputy just doesn't even won't even engage with him, just walks away. And then the other thing with the family dynamic is look at how much older Jonathan is than Will. That's a pretty big age gap. So I don't know that Lonnie is a stable enough guy to have been married to Joyce for that many years. So I feel like he's the type of guy who is can't hold a job. Instead, he's gonna fix this car and sell it, but swindle somebody. Like he didn't actually put an engine in it. Because he's got that car when Jonathan goes to, and his girlfriend, he's got some like 19-year-old living with him, even though he's 40. So I feel like he's a really unstable guy. I can't imagine that he would have been married to Joyce for as many years as is the gap between Jonathan and Will.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like maybe early on, like maybe still in high school or just after high school or something, she got pregnant with Jonathan, and they weren't even married at that time, and then maybe they separated, then maybe they got back together and got married, and she had Will, and then he left again, and then that was when you'll hear those flashbacks of her on the phone, like, why haven't you come to pick up Will yet? You were supposed to take him to this baseball game.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my fictitious backstory. I think Hopper knows Lonnie, and Lonnie knows Hopper, and Hopper used to date Joyce, and Hopper's over the fact that Joyce made a really bad life decision and married Lonnie instead of him.
Yes, I agree completely. There was, I will say, I have one, I know I keep saying I have one small issue, where he's talking to Hopper when they're out on the search party, and Hopper lies about his daughter, and, you know, pretends like she's still alive. And then 5 seconds later, some unknown character who you've never met reveals that he's lying and his daughter's dead.
Yeah.
I felt like they rushed that, and they could have drawn that out longer, and it would have been interesting to not know.
That was definitely a tiny little afterthought. Okay, the person needs to exposit this real quick and then walk away.
Yeah, I think I would have liked it more if I had found out later, oh man, Hopper's been lying all this time.
Oh, that's true.
You know.
They should have saved that as a reveal.
Yeah, or just like slowly like start to hint at it, so you're like, wait, hang on a second.
Why have I never seen his daughter?
Does her living uptown in the city mean that she's dead?
Because I love that element of him. I love that he can't even admit out loud that she's dead. He's just is lying to himself and to everybody else.
I thought that was great.
Yeah, they should have saved that for a slower reveal.
But that's okay.
So, which by the way, I just want to say, I think one of the biggest indicators of how compelling the show is that it could make me care about even the Nancy plot thread, because there's no other universe where I would ever pay attention to a teen romance story ever for any reason. I can't even name a single teen romance movie I've ever watched.
I mean, Star Wars is a teen romance movie.
Actually, I think there's not been as compelling a love story since Anakin and Padme.
I truly, deeply love you.
I think Anakin and Padme set the benchmark, then Stranger Things, raised the bar. So I feel
another good teen romance, Jon Snow and Daenerys, because if we're going by the books, they're 16 and 19. So
right. So I would like
romance.
to point out. I do want to point out. This isn't so much relevant to this podcast, but I do want to point out. George Lucas gets a lot of criticism for Anakin and Padme's romance, how it was rushed and how the dialogue was written. But I would argue that Jon Snow and Daenerys' romance, which I've been looking forward to for 7 years, but I shouldn't say looking forward to, but I've been expecting it would happen for 7 years. But probably the amount of screen time that Jon Snow and Daenerys get to actually build their romance is probably not as many minutes even as Anakin and Padme had.
Oh, no. No, it's so rushed. I was frustrated by that. I was frustrated by the whole season being 7 episodes and rushing everything instead of taking its time, but whatever.
Right, very true, but that is a different podcast. But you don't have to worry about that because you get Nancy's romance story, which there is no other show that could ever make me care about who Nancy's going to be with, and yet this show is so compelling. The Nancy scenes, I actually care whether she's with Steve or not, which, by the way, Steve is bad for her. She should be with Jonathan, 100%.
You're an idiot, Steve Harrington.
He's nice by the end.
I didn't want him to turn.
Steve learns a lesson and grows
They wanted
up.
him to turn. They wanted him to be redeemed. I didn't want that. I want... He's irredeemable in my eyes. He's not right for her. She should be with Jonathan.
He probably isn't, but at least he learned from his mistakes and tried to be a better person.
You're an idiot, Steve Harrington.
Yeah. I want to talk about Jonathan because I like Jonathan. Jonathan is one of my favorite characters.
I'm Team Jonathan.
I like Jonathan.
Nancy should be with Jonathan. Jonathan is the most... He's the most responsible... I don't know how to exactly define. I think he's the most responsible and, singularly heroic. Like, when something needs to be done, he knows that's the thing that needs to be done. So, when his mom is going crazy... So after they smash his camera, he drives home, and his mom was scared by the Demogorgon, and he hugs his mom and protects her and comforts his mom. He's not... At that point, he's not worried about this childish... all the bullies at school broke my camera. He knows that the most important problem right now is that Mom is falling apart because Will is gone.
Can you do me a favor, Mom? Can you just try to get some sleep? Huh?
Yeah.
Can you do that for me?
I promise.
Yeah.
I will.
Yeah.
I just need to sit here for a minute.
All right, I'll go make breakfast. Yeah?
He knows what to do at that moment. And when it's time to go get the gun later in a later episode, he's on it. And
what a beautiful time when you could just walk into a store and buy a gun and explosives.
The 80s. So anyway, you were going to say
While
something
smoking a
about
cigarette.
you were going to say something about Jonathan, but I'm team Jonathan 100%.
I am too. I love
Steve.
Jonathan. So Steve, by the end of the season, I like Steve because I think he grew up and he learned to, that his friends were bad. And here's the thing: I think that eventually Nancy and Jonathan will be together, but they couldn't do it at the end of season 1. That's boring. Doing about 3 seasons of them happily dating, that's just boring. In the same way that they couldn't just have Jim and Pam get together in episode 2. We had to wait 5 seasons, or else it would have been boring. And I like I said, I like Steve, and Steve grows up. Although Steve is very rude in episode 3. But Jonathan is kind of creepy, as much as I like him, when he takes pictures of them at the pool. It's weird.
But it is very weird. But he does have, there's one excuse for it. He says something later about when they're, and I think this is episode 4 or 5, they're looking at photos where she's trying to find a photo of Barb. And he says something about how...
It's just sometimes people don't really say what they're really thinking. But you capture the right moment and it says more.
Oh, for sure. And like at the beginning of it wasn't creepy. It's when he starts taking pictures of her through the window while she's getting changed. That's creepy. And he's a little weird. But I love Jonathan, and he's wonderful. And you're right, yes, he is the most heroic character, and he's the most level-headed character, and he's the most selfless character, I think.
Selfless, yeah.
Selfless. He's very selfless. I'm just very happy he got a new camera at the end of the show.
Spoiler.
That poor guy. Yeah.
That's the biggest spoiler of the whole thing. I'm going to have to edit that out.
Yeah, really.
I mean,
Everyone's
everybody
wondering.
knows that Dumbledore dies, and everybody knows that...
Soylent Green is people!
And that Elle kills Hopper at the end.
Yeah.
But nobody's going to know about the camera.
No. They
So
really are.
better edit the camera out.
That's it. That's what I saw.
My mom, I thought she was crazy. But she said, that's not Will's body, that he's alive.
And if he's alive,
And Barbara.
Yeah, I liked the characters of Jonathan and Nancy a lot, and they did a good job of making these characters that I care about, because there's tons of shows. I think I guess I mentioned it earlier, and then I got sidetracked and I didn't get to. But when you mentioned a lot of people don't share the tastes that you share, that was why I've spent so long wondering why this show compels me so much, because there are tons of shows that are popular that I don't like, that I've tried to get into and can't. Walking Dead.
You don't like Lost because it's J.J. Abrams.
I know. I'm glad that I didn't end up... It was him back in the day. So Walking Dead, Lost, Heroes, Rome. So many shows that are very popular. You'd think I'd be interested in. I love Roman history. I love post-apocalypse. But I try to watch these shows, and I can't get into them. Either the characters don't speak to me, or it's not paced right, or something. But this show, even a scene of Nancy and Steve reading flashcards in her bedroom, has me leaning in closer to the screen, wanting to see what they're going to do next.
Yeah. They're obviously very, very, very good at what they do, and they put a lot of thought into everything, not just certain points. I think what you said about they have rules and they don't just throw things in because they look good is the most important part of that, and what makes it such a good show. Because when you just start throwing things in because they look good and because you think they'll be fun, you eventually devolve into Michael Bay, who does everything because it's fun. There's different levels. There's, on a scale of 1 to Michael Bay, how Michael Bay are you?
I think he's an 11.
Yes.
No pun. No
there's no Michael Bay, something like this, where it's like, we do everything because it's good for the story, not just because it's sensational and looks good. And then there's Michael Bay, who's like, I will make every decision based on what will make this more spectacular, even if it makes no sense.
Or the Fast and the Furious. Every movie
Exactly.
of that is just, how can we top the last one? So last time we had cars flying out of airplanes. Now we have to have cars coming out of the International Space Station or something. I mean,
The best one was
just...
last one where they're driving through Antarctica and a submarine bursts out of the ice.
Yeah,
and
I didn't
flings
watch
cars
that.
through it. I love Cars and think they're really cool. Those movies are so bad that I have no interest in watching them, despite my love of said thing, which is a good, honestly, is a good point to bring up about TV shows, is there are shows that are great, are sci-fi, and we don't like them, and both of us are huge sci-fi fans. On the flip side, neither of us are particularly in love with nostalgia in the 80s, and, like I said, it kind of annoys me, honestly, when people post about it all the time online, and then this TV show, which is about nostalgia in the 80s, is the best thing ever.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's so well made.
Exactly. There's nothing about this show on paper that would really get me to watch. I lean toward epic things, Game of Thrones and Star Wars, huge world-spanning things, not interpersonal things. And yet here they have me caring about the interpersonal things. I care whether Joyce gets her son back. I care why Hopper's life is all messed up now.
What got me with the show that I liked so much is that, as nostalgic as it is, and as much as it is just chock full of 80s stuff, it doesn't annoy me like the rabid fandom of everyone on the internet that nostalgizes the 70s and 80s is this, or the 90s is like, oh, this is the best time ever, and they, post pictures of things that were like childhood toys or stuff like that. But this show never once annoyed me. I was just delighted that I felt like it was the 80s.
Right. The nostalgia thing these days can be a really big cheesy factor, and it wasn't here.
Mm-hmm. Yes. The Duffer Brothers, they're barely older than we are, which means that they were barely,
Right, somehow decades
they're watching
work
a lot
this
of this.
way.
Well, I mean, they were only 6 when
Somehow
the 90s came
decades
around.
project themselves forward.
The 90s didn't end until 2004, so it's true. Think about it.
Probably. David Harbour is a kid of the 80s, and he's 41
yes,
now.
Absolutely.
He's 41 now, so he was...
It says 42 on Wikipedia.
Oh, 42. Oh, how dare I?
How dare you?
So he...
You must have checked before April 10th, his birthday.
Lucky you had that page open right at that moment. So he was, I believe, from 5 to 15 through the 80s. I think he was born in 75 or 76.
He was. April 10th, 1975.
So he's a child of the 80s. He grew up all through the 80s. He was the right age to get through all this. So unless you are 42 years old, then you must have been watching the 80s stuff after the 80s. You must have been watching 80s movies in the 90s or early 2000s, because all these people who claim 80s nostalgia are not as old as David Harbour.
No, you are correct.
Not that he's old. He's a handsome man.
Yes.
Was occupying a large part of Lebanon. Today, Syria has become a home for...
Hopper is kind of the male lead of it, the adult male lead at least. And so for them to take a chance on me was really, very gratifying and very humbling, and I really wanted to do justice to the material. So I really went to work on the soul of this guy. I really wanted to do a lot of work to create a really special character.
So we are going to watch just a couple of YouTube videos on here. The best thing you can do on an audio-only podcast is watch video.
Joe Rogan does it all the time.
But what I really want them to do is go and watch these videos, so they'll all be...
Will they be linked in the show notes?
In the show notes and on the Facebook page. The reason is I really want, for example, with the David Harbour interview we're going to listen to, he is a deep, deep guy. I mean, some actors are really deep, and then other actors are just there. They're really, really pretty.
You got Daniel Day-Lewis and you got Orlando Bloom. That's mean. I don't know anything about Orlando Bloom. He could be really deep.
Probably. But, fortunately for us, David Harbour is not that way.
No.
Millie Bobby Brown, not that way. These kids are very talented little kids, all of them.
Mm-hmm.
David Harbour, very deep actor, thinks about his stuff, and I really think that does enrich the experience, because especially, I think you're already there if you're listening to a podcast. So if you just watch a show and you go, oh, that was a nice show, and then you go watch the next show, it's a very surface level enjoyment of it. And if you're that kind of person, you probably already didn't listen to this podcast. But if if you enjoy things that enrich the experience of it, so if you watch a movie and then you want to read the book, or if you watch a movie and you come listen to a podcast about it, you really should dig into some of these actors, because probably the most stark example, Millie Bobby Brown, no lines in the show. Her lines are like, Mike. You hear her in any kind of interview, you'd think she's 35 years old. You'd think she's Charlize Theron. She has this snappy British accent.
Charlize Theron is South African.
The best, very true, huge difference. Actually, the best thing you can do is find interviews where those two are paired up, where you get Millie Bobby Brown and David Harbour on stage together, because they play off each other. So you've got this 42-year-old man with all this life of experience and this little 12-year-old girl, but they're going back and forth like they're both acting veterans of decades. So, and the way she interacts with fans, the way, just the way she talks and carries herself, way more than 12 years old. And then David Harbour, we're going to do one little interview with him here. I just picked little 1-minute clips of it that we're going to listen to, and that you'll be seeing for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
But he's very he's very deep with his stuff. Like in his mind, he's changing the world through acting, and I don't say that facetiously. So anyway, we're gonna start off though. This is not deep. This is just to show you the incredible talent some of these kids have. You may have already seen this. This is their Emmys dance.
I like the stage here at the Emmys.
Now,
it looks like the top of Barad-dûr.
That's true, it does, where Gandalf was imprisoned.
Oh, that's the top of Orthanc. Oh, Excuse me,
sorry.
sir.
You're right. I'm majorly messed up. So, this is a 3-minute video, so we're not going to probably cut like the middle 2.5 minutes out on the audio, so that they're not just listening to us watch people dance.
For 3 minutes and 15 seconds.
But here we go. This is at the Emmys.
I love this song.
Get the 3 kids dancing here. So we've got Caleb, we've got Gaten, and we've got Millie. So
Caleb
we've
has
got
some
Lucas.
snazzy clothes on.
Yeah, exactly. That's the first thing I wanted you to notice.
Woo!
So we got Lucas, Dustin, and 11 dancing on stage. Lucas is in just the nicest jacket.
Ooh, they can sing. I'm impressed. Woo! This is incredibly
impressive. If you're impressed by her singing now, just hold on to your chair.
I have heard her sing before, but...
Yep, I played you one clip of her singing
Yes.
before.
Oh, man, Lucas!
Taking the jacket off.
This is unreal. Ooh.
Yeah, they changed the lyrics. They say they're at the Emmys.
Whew, that was impressive. I will clap for them.
These kids, I tell you.
Man.
These kids.
That is something else.
So let's go to, let's do David Harbour just for a second here.
Yeah, I mean, I've had one of these careers where like I've done a lot of work, and you've sort of been that guy from that thing, or it's like you'll go see a movie and you'll be like, oh, that guy, but you
can't place him in anything.
It's different for the studio to take a chance on you to sort of, Stranger Things has a bunch of different storylines. There's tons of, but Hopper is kind of the male lead of it, the adult male lead at least, and so. For them to take a chance on me was really, very gratifying and very humbling, and I really wanted to do justice to the material. So I really went to work on the soul of this guy. Like, I really wanted to do a lot of work to create a really special character. And I think it was in the writing, and then I was able to bring a lot of stuff that I understood about that.
That's how a good actor should approach any character.
Kind of great fit.
He's
Can
wonderful.
Can you elaborate at all on what type of stuff you brought to the role?
I mean, a lot of my work is really personal, like with any sort of artist's work. Like I played a lot of villains in my career. Like I play a lot of bad guys.
Scary face.
What I really liked about the character was I wanted to make him a bit of a bad guy in the beginning. Like not a bad guy, but like a guy that you don't trust, you aren't sure about. And then I wanted him to grow into a heroic stature, because I like that journey, and I think that it, one of
Steve
my
went on that
about acting
journey
in general is that I, if it can do anything in this world, I think it can maybe open people's hearts to the fact that people are more complicated than maybe you give them credit for when you initially meet them. And that guy that cuts you off, who you hate, or the guy that you have a prejudice toward, has a story, and that his or her story has led them to a certain group of character traits which you might not like. But the more you understand their story, the more empathy you can have, and the more compassion that maybe you can have for this person. So that was one of the interesting things about starting this work, was like I wanted to make him a guy who you were like, this guy's kind of a jerk, like this guy hates children, he drinks, he pops pills, he kind of makes fun of people, he's kind of a jerk. And then I wanted you to see that shtick that he has developed came out of a place of real tragedy, personal tragedy in his life, and then you can have more compassion for him. So that was sort of the arc of the character.
The way he's talking makes it sound like there wasn't that much written in the script, honestly. Like,
no, he
talking about popping pills and all that. I mean, that's already all in there. So,
well, what he's talking about, I guess, the way that he. So the popping pills was already in the script. So he says in some other interview that they had the first 6 episodes scripts already written before they started filming the first episode, and then during that time they wrote the last 2 episodes. But so the smoking and the popping pills and stuff was already in there. So that's the part he's talking about that comes from them. And then the part that comes from him is things like the hat was from him. Hopper had no hat. Came in for the audition and he wore the hat because he said Hopper is probably he's the guy who would hide his face. He doesn't want the emotion open to people to read. He doesn't want people looking in his bloodshot eyes, and he doesn't want people seeing his face as he makes emotions with his face. So he went into the audition with a baseball cap pulled way far forward so you could barely see his eyes, and they said, "Can you take that off for the audition?" And he said, "Nope." And so because he thinks that's what Hopper would do. So and there's things like the scene where he's asking the kids and they tell him Mirkwood, and he says, "I said I know it. You guys are going to go straight home." They asked him to be nicer to the kids, and he said, "No, that's not how Hopper would do it." And famously, the scene where he punches Jonathan in the arm, like, "Man up, Jonathan, your mom needs you." Boom. Punches him in the arm. They told him to be nicer, and he says, it's not how Hopper would do it. So that's what he's talking about, the half and half, and some of it came from him and some came from them.
Okay.
So this is David Harbour on Stranger Things Build series, just so that I'm crediting them and not pirating their thing. We're just going to listen to a couple 1 minute, 2 minute clips here. But David Harbour, anytime you want to be enlightened and enrich your Stranger Things experience, just find any of the long David Harbour interviews.
Long-form interviews are the best anyway, for anything. Of course.
I don't know why anyone would listen to a 2-minute interview, because they ask, "Are you excited that you're on the show? Are you happy that you won a Grammy?"
You know what the worst
time?
thing ever is? Done. Press junkets. Said actor would sit there and have 20 to 30 to 40 to 50 different journalists come in and ask them the same 4 questions in a 2-minute, and they have to try and pretend like they're excited. What a great question I've never heard. Did you love working with Tom Hanks?
No, I hate it.
It was the greatest experience of my life. Next person. Did you love... How was it working with Tom Hanks? And you have to sound excited 50 times and give them all a great soundbite.
Yeah, I would have absolutely no patience for that.
And you do that for months.
But
on the press tour.
Fortunately, though, I will not be playing such interviews because so when you go on YouTube, find any of the interviews with David Harbour that are more than 20 minutes long. There's 30, 40, 50 minute David interviews. Harbour. And he goes into some very, very deep stuff that is about. I mean, number one, I'm so much happier that he loves Hopper as much as I love Hopper, because I've talked about this before on the Star Wars podcast, that when you compare Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford, Mark Hamill understands. So maybe Mark Hamill is not quite as much a rabid fan as rabid fans are, but he understands that rabid fans are rabid fans. So if you came up to Mark Hamill and said, "Hi, I would love to get your autograph, Mr. Hamill. This is my son, Mark Hamill Smith," or Luke Skywalker Smith.
I think he was naming the Mark Hamill.
He'd be like, he would say, even if he thought you were crazy, he would understand what it meant to you, and he would understand what it meant to that little kid, and he would treat it with that respect. if you went up to Harrison Ford and said, "Oh, Mr. Ford, I love you so much.
F off.
This is my son, Han Solo Smith," he would tell you right to your face that you're crazy. And so if you ask them, what was your favorite character to play, or how do you feel about playing this character, a guy like Mark Hamill will tell you how much it means to him and how much he understands how much it means to the fans, where Harrison Ford, not so much. He's just, he's just not that kind of person. Nothing bad. So I love watching Han Solo. I don't really love listening to Harrison Ford interviews. I love watching Luke Skywalker, and I love listening to Mark Hamill interviews. So it makes me so happy that a guy like David Harbour loves Hopper as much as we love Hopper, and that he puts that much effort into it. For example, starting up smoking again when he had quit. Because it means that every moment Hopper is on screen, David Harbour was making a choice to do a thing. He was never just, and he'll tell you exactly this. He says, when directors tell you just look next to the camera and look sexy, look like a strong man. He hates that kind of thing. He wants to be conveying some part of the story with every movement that he makes and every look that he gives another actor. So please spend a couple hours out of 1 week just listening to David Harbour go on and on, because everything he says will enrich your Stranger Things experience.
Is he wearing a boot? Did he break his leg?
He tore his Achilles tendon while playing Achilles in theater in New York.
Nice. All right. I'm ready to watch this.
A clip that I did not queue up for us, so we won't be playing this one, but he says in another interview, so just listen around, you'll find that one. He talks about how he was laying around for about 2 months after having surgery on his Achilles. And what did he do? He went on Twitter, looked at all the fan art, and read the Stranger Things fan fiction. And he loves the Hopper-Joyce shippers. So again, he takes this very...
I hate the term shippers.
He takes this very seriously. And what he's talking about is a thing, again, to bring Mark Hamill into it, because Mark Hamill is such a great guy. When he talks about he had to have like that journey for Hopper, that arc of going from an unlikable guy to this hero at the end. For example, one of the criticisms that Luke Skywalker sometimes gets is how whiny he is at the beginning. I was going to go to Tashi Station to pick up some power converters. But that is 100% a choice by Mark Hamill, because you can't start out with Luke being this great hero and then end with Luke being this great hero. In order for Luke to end as this great hero, he's got to start somewhere way far away from that.
Mm-hmm.
So Mark Hamill is purposely making Luke whiny at the beginning so he's less likable, so that he can become more likable as the show goes. That's what he's doing with Hopper, and that's what you would want him to do. You don't want somebody to be very narcissistic and say, from the moment I walk on screen, all eyes are gonna be on me, and I'm gonna be awesome. You would rather have him have some of these flaws. So next, if you don't have any more to say about that one, let me go to Millie Bobby Brown. Millie Bobby Brown, ladies and gentlemen. If you didn't know she speaks with a British accent, you will now.
The audition for Stranger Things was like a hurry up. No, it was like a wait hurry up. So I had no idea what I was auditioning for. It was just a roller coaster. I had no idea what I was doing. They gave me a script. I read the script. They asked me back 4 times for an audition. I Skyped with the directors and we talked about 80s movies and E.T. and Stand By Me, Poltergeist, and I immediately fell in love with these directors, and they were so young, and I was so surprised by how they were just geniuses. One of the directors came up to me and said, "Bzzz," over my head, and I didn't know what he was talking about. And then the director was like, "Are you ready?" And I was like, "For what?" And they was like, "To cut all your hair off." And I was like, "Oh, okay, all right." And the next day I got the job, and I was like, "Well, no, you know what? I'm gonna cut it." It was about down to here.
I have now twice been cast in a play and not told till once the day after I accepted the role, once till a week before performances that I was going to have to shave my beard off. And I love my beard and have a very long beard. And yes, they did not give me the courtesy. I was so upset both times, and it was not cool.
But so more importantly, though, just hear her talk about, I met the directors and they were so young, but they're just geniuses.
Yeah.
She's 12 years old, and yet, but I mean, she's got that kind of intellect. She sees these 35-year-old men as these peers. She's like, that's the sort of thing, though, that you would expect David Harbour to say, and that he does say. Actually, David Harbour says that they are these hillbilly nerds, but that they're excellent showrunners, because he loves working with them, and he says it's the greatest creative team he's been a part of in his career so far. But there he is, a 42-year-old man with more than 20 years acting experience saying that.
Yeah.
And here she is, 12 years old, saying the same thing. So, she's a little advanced beyond her years.
A little bit.
But let's just go back to Millie again for a second.
You've seen Titanic? James Franco. Oh.
I love James Franco too.
So many people you could have crushes on. What is a real crush, people?
Sounds childish, but no, listen.
Really if you define the word crush, it's a negative word. Your heart feels crushed.
Wow,
I mean,
who says that?
People, but
that is deep.
That's my ultimate birthday dream, is like just karaoke and Bruno Mars just sings to me.
Bruno Mars is pretty wonderful.
Just the Way You Are, or Versace on the Floor. There's so many good ones now, and especially
there's a lot of Bruno Mars you shouldn't be listening to, though.
Just the way you are, and when you smile, the whole world stops and stares for a while. 'Cause girl, you're amazing, just the way you are.
Woo! And if I had a tenth of the talent that she has in her little finger, goodness,
she is very talented.
I just have no words. No words. So I'm gonna go right on to my next clip here.
Talented lady.
Mm-hmm. And again, something else you'll hear from David Harbour. Some people have to work decades, have to work 20 years to get their big break on Stranger Things, and then there are other people who have that talent from this young age. Yeah. So I don't remember if it comes up in any of the clips on here, but I think it doesn't. But David Harbour continues to train with an acting coach in the School of American Method. But he says that it was a very long process to work to get good enough to be on this show. He wasn't that good when he started. Mm-hmm. And it's a constantly evolving process that he is very slowly getting better, and he wants to be Daniel Day-Lewis when he's 60. Oof. And that's still 20 years away.
Daniel Day-Lewis is gone from acting now. Mm-hmm.
But you compare this with, and this is something that a lot of people won't see, but it's very easy to see in the martial arts world. You can have a guy build his entire career and just barely make it to a spot, and you can have another guy come in and right away he's already at that spot. And it's bizarre, but it's interesting. But I guess it's like Mr. Clark, the teacher, says, sometimes science isn't very forgiving. It's neat, but not forgiving. Mm-hmm. So if you're one of those actors who does not have that kind of talent, I'm sorry. If you're a kind of martial artist who does not have that kind of talent, I'm sorry. If you're like most of us, you will never ever be as good as a few people are right from the start, like our amazing 4 little child actors here, or 5.
5. Don't forget Will.
Nope, can't forget Will. Not that you should be dissuaded from following your dreams. Just brace yourself, because it's not easy. Okay, back to actor David Harbour. Same interview, but another little 2-minute clip here.
Amazing, right? Amazing. And I think we want to see people that are ordinary people represented, people we can identify with, and then see them take heroic action so that maybe in our lives, I mean, I know Hopper makes me want to be a better man. Like, I can see a man who I can identify with and then see him take a heroic action, do something heroic, and then maybe in my life I can experience something where I'm like, oh yeah, I can make the right choice.
That's great.
Whereas my problem with, I may be shooting myself in the foot with the rest of my career, but my problem with the current trend of a lot of the comic book movies.
No, he's going to be the next Thor. Come on.
They're so far outside of us that we
next Captain America,
and we admire them. They're like hot and they're amazing and they're strong and but I have trouble identifying with guys like that because I can't go on their journey with them. I can sit back and sort of like a fancy car, like kind of admire it, but I want to car that I can afford, and then like get in and drive and find out it's an amazing thing. So yeah, it's a bit exhausting. I mean, you know, I want art to be representative of us.
That's really, really good. I had a friend of mine actually recently say they didn't like things like superhero characters because they can't relate to them, but they brought up in contrast Sam from the Lord of the Rings, that he's a hero.
Oh, Sam is the best.
I think he might be the best character in fiction ever, but he's a hero and he is a very good person. I mean, he's better than Frodo, but he still fails and can be related to, and he struggles, and he is tempted by the ring to be Samwise the Great, and he almost doesn't destroy, doesn't help destroy it, but he's someone you can aspire to, and he's not, he doesn't look like... I love that they had Sean Astin put on 30 pounds to be Sam, instead of being like, hey, can you look more like Viggo Mortensen? Because we really like what he looks like. So yes, that was a great moment for him to say. And I love that he understands that acting is important, and watching movies is good for you, and it can inspire you to be a good person. So good on David Harbour.
Can't say enough good about David Harbour.
He's pretty great.
Pretty great guy. So here we are. Again, I probably won't keep this whole clip because it's a 5-minute clip, so I probably won't keep the whole thing, but I'll show you the whole 5 minutes here. Now, if you're up on the pop culture, you've already seen this. It's Jimmy Fallon.
Unfortunately, I hate Jimmy Fallon. So
I remember when he was just a little guy on Saturday Night Live. Way before he got his big thing.
So bad.
When he was just one of the huge ensemble of Saturday Night Live, he was just one guy.
He's just not a good host. Here's what somebody said about him.
I think only in comparison to Jay Leno.
Well, no. Here's what someone said about him.
You can't ever...
Well, yeah, you can't. No one's ever going to be Jay Leno. But someone said every other late night show host is good at making the guests stand out and showing that guest is great. Jimmy Fallon wants everyone to know he's talented. Like, not an episode goes by that Jimmy Fallon's like, can I sing with you guys? Can I perform? It's like, we know you're talented. You did Saturday Night Live for 10 years.
That is harsh.
You are there to facilitate people loving the guests, and he's not very good at that. So,
ouch! Shots fired.
I don't dislike him as much as J.J. Abrams, but I dislike him.
No problem with shots fired at J.J. Abrams, but Jimmy Fallon, I don't know him well enough to criticize him.
Okay. Connectivity issues.
Called Stranger Strings. And here's how it works.
So they're just...
We all wrote down a few facts about ourselves.
They're just flipping up little cards.
Kind of strange.
The card has a fact about somebody, and they got to pick who it is.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then they're all going to shoot each other with silly string.
Kinds of silly string. We're going to take turns reading a card, and then we count to 3. Remember, that's very important. Okay. We count to 3, then everyone sprays silly string at the person they think wrote that card.
Nice. I like that they have protective eyewear.
Safety first.
Gosh, all right.
This is a Netflix show.
Jimmy Fallon put safety first.
The first card. Here we go.
Just thinking about how bad we're going to be.
I want to get to know you guys. Someone here said... Somebody said
that in 3rd grade, the fire alarm startled me. And I cried in front of my class.
Doesn't she just have the most posh
accent? Oh, that's
accent?
Jimmy Fallon, because he's a dork.
3. Oh, you're a good actor. That was the worst. That was really... All right, come on. Can you read?
Here we go. Listen.
Can I read?
Yeah, can you?
Can you host?
Oh.
He cannot.
Shots fired.
Finn Wolfhard speaking the truth. What a guy.
Is that a Stonewash jacket?
No, it's Heather.
Rap. Nicki Minaj's verse from Monster.
Oh, that's definitely Millie.
Have you heard it before?
No, I'm just sure it is. She sings.
Absolutely. And she kills it.
Yep.
I did not know you were a fan of the rap music.
I'm not.
Can you give us a little taste?
But of tiny white people rapping, yes.
So you like Eminem?
No, he's a medium-sized white man.
Oh. I like her censoring.
She's bleeping it.
That is actually very impressive. And I like that she keeps her accent when she raps, because there aren't really a lot of British rappers.
Alright, let's go back to David Harbour, because that was pretty fun.
One last time.
We need some intelligence.
Yeah.
But yeah, so now we've heard Millie,
Amazing
we've seen her dance, we've heard her do Bruno Mars. Who else did she do?
Who is in the running for like the modern day Michael Jackson. It's him or Justin Timberlake.
And we've heard her do Nicki Minaj. She is a singer. If anybody wants to go to find on YouTube either Millie Bobby Brown Brazil or Charlie Brown, not the cartoon character, but her brother. Tons of videos of her singing on there.
Nice.
So here we return to David Harbour. Last little clip of David Harbour here. And he's talking intelligent stuff again. Here we go.
Due diligence for my job by not
Hot detail for season 2?
For season 2.
Oh, man.
No. Who are you giving the waffle to at the end of season 1?
You can't ask season 2 spoilers.
I gotta ask. I know you can't say anything, but come up with some sort of witty response anyway.
All right. No, I mean, I will tell you that, like, there's no way you can create a character as iconic as 11 in our show and, like, just kill her at the end of season 1. Like, you gotta bring her back.
They killed Ned Stark.
Something, or in some form. Like,
and Khal Drogo.
That would be amazing. If, like, Millie was just in those glasses and that blouse. Like,
or if it was just Millie saying, I'm Barb, and everybody had to go along. Okay, I guess it's Barb is back.
We used to call you 11, but now you're, okay. So I do think that in season 2 you can expect, and, one of the interesting things about Hopper's story is that he lost a daughter, And so I think in this character of 11, who at the end of the series, he gives her up. I mean, he kind of sells her out. And, I have my own justifications for that, but I think there's a lot of guilt in there.
I want to know.
Think there's a lot of, and it's a young girl who, like, it would be his daughter's age. His daughter died at 5 years ago. So I think that what you'll see in season 2
11
is
is
a lot
not
of
Harper's
stuff with
daughter.
Hopper and 11 kind of searching for meaning. She's looking for Papa, which she thought she had, and this guy that manipulated her and used her. I'm looking for redemption in terms of a girl, my daughter, who I couldn't save. And so hopefully you'll see those characters interact a lot, and you'll see a lot of that emotional complexity, along with a rip-roaring story, rip-roaring sci-fi tale. At the heart of it, hopefully you'll see these two people who are trying to right the wrongs that they have.
3 people, if you include Steve Harrington.
In season 1.
Yeah, Steve has a lot of wrongs he needs to right.
He righted almost all of them at the end by the end of season 1.
If you say so. So that's not spoilers there, just that he is, and I believe this particular interview was done before they filmed season 2.
Oh,
because
wow.
there's other interviews of him from after they wrapped filming season 2. I think this was before that, but obviously, so he has a solid understanding of the character. He's worked very closely with the Duffer Brothers, and so he knows the general direction the character is going even before he sees completed scripts. But it's also that he wants to see the same things that we want to see. He's not just I love that he's not saying, whatever they have for season 2. My paycheck will be bigger this season. I'll show up and I'll do it. And then I'll do a few more interviews if they pay me enough. He wants to see the same things out of Hopper that the fans want to.
Mm-hmm. That is great.
So if you want to hear David Harbour, he will talk for a very long time about the craft of acting, about how through acting he reveals character things. It's really neat to hear him talk about how the complex character traits that he would see in people. He said that's terrible fodder for dinner party conversation. But then when he would do it on stage, people would applaud. So that's why he became addicted to acting, is that he could explore complicated characters without. He says that sometimes if he tried to explain that to a person, they'd get mad at him and say that, no, why would you say people are that way? But if he shows it on stage, then it's then
people love it. That's a really good point. I like that.
And he talks about the relationship between actors and directors. And he tries to defend a little bit the idea of, he'll talk about, you always hear the horror stories from the director's side of some diva actor says, "Don't ever give me a note. If you give me another note, I walk." But he tries to defend a little bit from the actor's side. Imagine you are trying to be in this character's head, and then somebody's telling you, "Play this scene sexier. Just look at the camera and look sexy like a strong male lead." And that doesn't help at all. It doesn't help him get into Hopper's skin at all, which he says the Duffer Brothers don't do. They're great at that. So go listen to David Harbour for hours and hours, because a deep guy talks about lots of things. Even if it has nothing to do with acting, like, not that you want to be a huge actor tomorrow, unless you do, that's fine. But even if not, it's the same sort of principles about how you become good at anything, because he's a 20-year overnight success, right? He didn't just start and end up this famous in one day. It took a long time of doing Shakespeare in the Park and tearing his Achilles tendon doing it before he got this.
Nice.
As opposed to Caleb and Gaten and Noah and Millie,
and Finn,
who are just fantastic right off the bat. Not that they didn't do the work. But
here's a question: are we about to watch a video about boxing?
Let me tell you,
on a podcast.
Let me tell you. Okay, and the audio. There's no audio on this video.
Why are we watching this?
So the audience will hear absolutely nothing.
This is worthless.
But I want to know: did you ever expect you would see this right here? What you are witnessing before your eyes?
She has terrible footwork, but it is still really cool.
Did you ever expect... she's just starting. Give her a couple years. I mean, I could improve that footwork. You want to describe what we're...
We're watching boxing, and it's great. No, I'm being mean.
And you know who that is?
Yeah, it's Millie Bobby Brown.
Millie Bobby Brown.
Yeah.
Training in Thai boxing.
Yes, her handwork is great. Her punching is great, and her especially because she's young, and it is very impressive.
And she's not going for a world title.
Yeah, I was just shocked.
I tell you, a lot of people made fun of me because I wanted to see the movie, I think it's called Atomic Blonde.
Yeah.
Is that the one? And they thought it was a really shallow movie, which I'm sure it is.
It is.
I haven't yet seen it, but I want to. But the reason is Charlize Theron did all this training for it.
Yes.
And if you watch the YouTube videos of Daisy Ridley training for Rey, that's just the easiest way you can impress me as an actor, is to just put yourself through grueling training to become the best physical actor.
So what is Millie Bobby Brown learning boxing for? Because obviously
everything.
Not for...
She's going to, I bet you...
not for Stranger Things.
Not for 11. Not that 11 is going to take out the Demogorgon with Thai boxing next season, or the Thessalhydra, whatever she has to fight next season. I think she just enjoys it. But she's going to be, give her a couple years, she's going to be in...
Since then,
she's going to be the next Scarlett Johansson.
She is very, very good example, because she does a lot of physical things, and she's a fantastic actress. So
yeah, so I'll put links, but just enrich your Stranger Things experience. Go watch all of those. It'll make you a better person.
You've been listening to the Stranger Things Talk podcast, presented by the Whitney Brothers. Subscribe on iTunes under Stranger Things Brothers, all one word. You can also find every episode on Facebook under facebook.com/Stranger Things Brothers, also one word. And please do follow them on Facebook, because they post the very best memes, articles, and interviews. You can also find their videos on YouTube. Just follow the link in the show notes. We're counting down to Season 2 on October 27th, so get ready to binge. New episodes every Friday until then. You can also follow the show on Twitter under ST Talk Brothers and Instagram under Stranger Things Brothers, also one word. Thanks for listening.